Alright, so for the next couple of minutes, this is just going to be like a pulls highlight from 3.7, just showing how everything went on my end. I'm not for sure if my pulls were just okay or if they were a little bit more on the bad side. The pulls are scattered all across the patch, so I think I went back and did multiple pull sessions, and this is just a compilation of what happened back then, trying to prepare myself for Night 2 as well as the Aquila King Stage boss. Looking back, it was a roller coaster of an experience, and as far as Irene in particular, she does remind me of how my initial Kafka pulls went way back in the day in like 1.2. I think Kafka released in 1.2. Very reminiscent of that. So I'll let this play out, and I will see you in the next section when I start dealing with anomaly arbitration. Here we go.
Kill.
Hey, yo, this is T.O.T. Thank you for dropping in today, if you have. I'm going to just be putting my thoughts out on what I think about certain team archetypes in the game currently, and also briefly talk about how I feel about Amphoreus characters moving into the future. This is going to be kind of a prediction thing. Again, nothing is ever really set in stone. MiHoYo is really the only company that really knows which way the wind is going to blow. So I was finally able to get my hands on Finon for his rerun, and I have been absolutely having a blast with Finon every single moment. I have to say, Finon really does remind me of Acheron in a lot of ways, because when Acheron came into the game back in the 2.x era, she basically broke the conventional rules of the game. She was basically like, I don't need a Harmony character, just give me Nihility characters and I'm gonna pop off. Which is still true to this day. You give her 2 good Nihility characters, she's gonna pop off, she's gonna do her thing, which I'll talk about Acheron more later on in the video. Finon has a very similar setup to where he's doing his own thing. The whole one-man army, once he goes into his core flame state, sending everybody off field, and just having the ability to advance forward enemies is like really huge. And then also on top of that, something else that makes him so deadly in his core flame state is that he doesn't have to worry about any action delay, which is actually massive because there has been a reoccurring debuff that exists in the Anomaly Arbitration, whether it's on a Knight stage or it's on a King stage. It's very, very nice to not have to worry about that model with Kevin Koslana / Finon. And I just love his animations, the giant meteor just dropping down from the sky and just crushing enemies. Now, he does have one particular drawback, and it's obviously whenever he's in a situation and he's having to deal with 5 targets at once, the meteor bounce really spreads out the damage and it really cuts back on his destructive power. But I feel like as long as it's a 1 to 3 target scenario, Finon does phenomenally well. Being able to implant the physical weakness unconditionally in his core flame state is mega huge. Now, I think a big question for me personally going forward is how is Finon going to perform in 4.x? This is my current takeaway with what little I've seen online versus in comparison to my own gameplay experience with Finon as well. Moving forward, if for players who want Finon to continue to perform well, you are going to want to get Cyrene and Ceridra. Obviously, Ceridra is kind of pretty huge because you're going to be able to do those double meteors, you're going to be able to do a lot more additional damage and things along those lines. It's pretty huge. Cyrene is also extremely huge for Finon because, for example, once you take out that time to get all those stacks and whatnot, it's going to be very annoying having to get the stacks over again if you don't have Cyrene. That is a drawback when you only have Ceridra, for example, because now as the player you're relying on ending the fight in that one ultimate phase, and as time goes by the enemies are going to get more and more HP, or there could just be mechanical checks that will prevent you from ending the fight in one ultimate cycle and will stall the fight out. So being able to go into that ultimate form, being able to stay in it with Cyrene is just absolutely massive. One other thing that I will say is going forward, I won't be surprised if it's going to eventually get to the point to where players are going to be incentivized to get Cyrene's E2 for the Finon team, just so they can continue to run things sustainless. Because there are certain fights that the enemies hit so hard, you're going to want to use a sustain with Finon, which probably isn't going to be the most ideal thing in most cases. And the reason why I say that is because Finon is on the field by himself and normally he destroys everything. There's going to be very few scenarios where a shield is going to be really good for him to have. I think there's that really ugly looking I-Core boss or whatever to where having a shield is a mechanical advantage. But outside of that, I feel more times than not, just running sustainless Finon is going to be his most ideal team. So with Cyrene having E2 at some point in the future, you're going to be in a much better position to continue to run sustainless even as enemies get more and more HP and as they continue to hit harder and harder. Now, as far as vertical investment into Finon himself, obviously his signature light cone is massive. It's huge. In fact, what I really like about Finon's light cone is that it has such a high base attack on it, you could actually use it on Dan Hong PT in the event that you're not using Finon. So even though Finon's signature light cone is really good for him, I could just use Finon's light cone on him if I'm using him in a different team, excluding Acheron, which with Acheron I'm still using Trent of the Universal Market, of course. I think for players who decide, well, maybe I don't want to get Cyrene or maybe I don't want to get Ceridra, I would also throw this out here as another piece of advice or caution. A lot of times Remembrance Trailblazer is used in this team as another party slot, and the fact of the matter is that eventually the Trailblazer will be getting more playable paths. So you can't always rely on this Ceridra, Cyrene, Remembrance Trailblazer team comp to be solid as it goes on. They're going to get another path, players are going to want to play the new path, and things along those lines. We saw the very same thing happened with Harmony Trailblazer. And it doesn't mean that Harmony Trailblazer is bad, it's just the more path options that become available, the less reliable the older paths are going to be for fallback for that said player. That's just the natural trajectory of things. And I suspect once we get Elation Trailblazer, a mass majority of the player base is going to transition over to Elation Trailblazer. And even if there is no Elation Trailblazer, eventually there's going to be other paths. So if you're somebody who's wanting to play Finon for the long haul, get your Cyrene, get your Ceridra, get Finon Signature Light Cone, and then I would probably start to vertical invest into the team after that. It would probably be a little bit safer and more flexible to try to get Cyrene E2 first, especially if you have numerous Chrysal hairs on your account. If not, then maybe you could look into getting Finon's E1 first, because I do believe that allows him to take a lot more actions while he's in his core flame state, which is really good. I'm not really so sure about the E2. There's people that say that the E2 changes everything. I don't have it, so I can't comment on it. But if you're somebody who's like, I'm a hardcore Finon main, then obviously your next step after getting Cyrene and Finon Ceridra core is to obviously get Finon's E2 and then Cyrene's E2, just so you have the best possible chance of running Sustainless going into the future. That's all really my thoughts. Again, I really love Finon. They did a remarkable job on him, and I feel like justice has been served. For the people who always wanted to play Kevin Castellana as a permanent character in Honkai Impact 3rd and never really got the opportunity to do that out of certain events, they put in work, and I feel like things were done right here. Justice was served. And you know, it makes me think back to my most popular video on this channel talking about Kevin Castellana, and it feels good. Everything came around full circle eventually. I'm happy. A lot of the player base is happy. Just W's all the way around. And that's all I really got to say as far as Finon. I'm going to continue loving this character moving forward and continue vertically investing into the team. We'll see what happens going into the future. Oh, and one more thing that I'll mention before I talk about Acheron in the next segment. The Chrysalis hairs in general were overtuned in 3.x, which is completely fine. I think going into 4.x, they will still feel very strong, but obviously the game is going to be going toward an elation path focus, and it will probably maybe focus on some other things as well. So it may feel like the performance is not going to be as strong, but I do feel like for anyone who wants to still go back and backpull for these characters, I think it's going to be completely fine, because everyone's not going to like the elation playstyle, which is completely fine. If you don't like that playstyle, you still got the Chrysalis hairs to go back and backpull or to vertically invest into them. I think for the most part, players are going to be fine. With that being said though, since we do have the option of picking up a free character right now, I would personally recommend Sparkle, just in case there's a super skill point heavy character that comes out in 4.x that you might like. It's better to be safe than sorry. Unless of course you're completing your DOT team, then go ahead and complete your DOT team if Kafka was the only piece that you were missing. I think those two characters are going to have the highest full priority for most of the community. I can see a couple of people pulling for Acheron because she is a Raiden May variant, and outside of that, I really can't see any other character being pulled for other than for collection purposes. I will briefly comment about Cyrene. It is crazy how strong this character is at E0, S0 performance, and this is a character that got Doom posted to all get out and back, but obviously once the general public got their hands on her, they found out how strong she ended up being at a base level. The thing that really surprises me a lot about Cyrene is that she is the ultimate battery in Honkai Star Rail. And what I mean by that is, regardless of how somebody's condition is for getting their ultimate back, when she pops that ultimate for the first time, everybody gets their ultimate back, regardless of the condition. So it could be Acheron that normally needs debuffs applied to enemies, or it could be Fei Xiao that has a hit count requirement. It doesn't matter. She gives everybody back their ultimate. And at least the way that she's coded right now, even though she'll have less synergy with 4.x characters, 5.x characters, and etc., unless those characters are coded differently to where Cyrene's ultimate won't sync with them, she should be able to give those characters in the future back their ultimate as well. Essentially, even though she's not the end-all be-all battery, she is the ultimate unconditional battery. So that is really, really powerful. And I feel like MiHoYo went all out on Cyrene, and I do feel like she is the most ambitious character that MiHoYo's done to date, because she has all of these unique buffs for all of these different characters with unique voice lines for each respective character. And I don't recall any other character that MiHoYo has done that's had that high amount of effort put into. I'm extremely satisfied with her. I'm happy I did get her. I didn't even know that she was going to sync so well with Finon. The synergy between those two, in my opinion, is just so freaking good, and I feel like they are the strongest duo in the game currently. My biased opinion, of course, with DOT, since that is my favorite archetype in the game. And I have to say that DOT has gotten so much love over the past couple of patches that it's still very surprising to me, but also it really shouldn't be surprising at the same time. Kafka is literally the centerfold of Honkai Star Rail for a lot of players, especially for somebody like myself. And once again, Kafka is the big reason why I gave Honkai Star Rail a chance to begin with. And I think MiHoYo understands that Kafka is an extremely important character lore-wise, and she's a very important character in the community as well. A lot of people just love Kafka. She's awesome, Mother Kafka. I think between patches 3.4 leading all the way up to 4.0 with Black Swan receiving the buff, I am of the opinion that this time, era, and period has been when T.O.T has gotten the most love and the most consistent support. Because way back in the day, we got Kafka, but we didn't have anybody else to really pair with her. Sure, you had Luca, you had Sampo, you had Guanifin, but T.O.T didn't really come into itself until 2.0, which by then, obviously, there was the OG setup of Ranmei, Ho-Ho, Black Swan, and Kafka. And then, as everybody knows, T.O.T didn't get anything for like a long time, all the way up until 3.4 when Kafka got a buff to where her follow-up would actually do substantial amount of damage. Her energy ended up being a lot higher than what it was, and she was able to just put out a whole lot of damage just in general. And obviously at this point, a good number of players swapped her over to the 4-piece win set just so she could go more frequently, just to name some examples. Now, after that buff in 3.4 and 3.5, we obviously got Hysolins, which was fantastic because one of the core drawbacks with T.O.T was just there wasn't enough T.O.Ts to detonate just in general. So Hysolin was able to come in and help address that. And not only that, but Hysolin was also able to help the team with skill points because whenever she uses her ultimate, the team gets a skill point back, which is very huge, especially if you're running your Kafka on a 4-piece win set now these days. Kafka uses up a lot of skill points. And then in 3.6, we got a sustain for free, Dan Heng, which if you haven't seen this strategy already, you can actually run an effect hit rate body piece on him. If you get him to 75% effect hit rate in the T.O.T team, that will actually give him more attack than running a traditional attack chest body piece for the T.O.T archetype specifically when you have Kafka. So that's pretty huge because even though Ho-Ho was a good sustain for the most part, I do feel that because T.O.T tends to be more on the paper side, I do prefer that this team archetype has a shielder instead of a healer for the sustain. And what makes it so great with Dan Heng is that the re-shielding for the dragon, its action advance will take place the more often whoever the dragon is tied to takes action. And because Kafka has a follow-up in her kit, she gets the attack very frequently, which means that dragon is coming up more often. It's refreshing the shields way more often. It's such a good synergy. And then obviously once we got into 4.0, Black Swan, she got her buffs. And what was so cool about Black Swan is that the buffs that she received, she is now able to stack Arcana way faster. It's a lot easier to apply her defense down debuff. And overall, it's just a really nice improvement. Now, one thing that I will say about Black Swan is that she's not always going to be that definitive third spot. And the reason why I say that is because she's still running into that same issue of the debuff from the ultimate that increases the damage the enemies take. That's still a drawback in her kit. And I think that's something that she'll just always innately have as a problem. This is mainly going to come up when you're fighting the Flame Reaver, and that would be one of the very few situations where I would personally probably still use Cyrene over Black Swan. But of course, this is just E0 S0 versus E0 S0 comparison. Now, maybe if you have an E1 Black Swan instead, or maybe an E2 Black Swan, maybe that situation is going to be different. I'm not for sure. T.O.T has gotten so much love again, and even if MiHoYo was to do nothing else with the archetype throughout the rest of 4.0, I would be completely fine with that because holy moly, they've really pushed T.O.T, and T.O.T feels amazingly strong right now. I'm not going to say that it's the strongest comp in the game, but I do feel like it is a very reliable comp, and it's something that is going to be very consistent going through 4.0. Just in my opinion. I could always be wrong. We could go through a phase where MiHoYo creates a whole bunch of anti-T.O.T content, which means enemies that just don't accept any kind of debuffs whatsoever, or enemies that move really fast like a Hule again, but we'll see. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I'm extremely happy with where T.O.T is at. I'm extremely happy with Mother Kafka and where she's at, and I look forward to continuing investing into this team comp going into the future.
Boom. Stand still. Offer you a rest.
Dragon soaring above the land. This is permanent!
Say bye to bleeding. Stand still. Any of this is rebels. Your cries rise. May as well kill them all. Relax. Time to say bye. Boom. Stand still.
We have the edge. Dragon soaring above the land. This is permanent!
What do you want to know? Stand still. Don't let wounds open your throat. Be intoxicated.
My strength is infinite.
Destiny isn't chosen. Memories are ever-changing. Beneath the silent waters lies an endless abyss.
So one thing that I've noticed when it comes to Acheron is, at least in Anomaly Arbitration, when she's dealing with enemies that don't innately have lightning weakness, it does slow down her performance to a noticeable degree. Now, that doesn't mean that she can't clear the content, but it is just going to be slower. Thankfully, I have Silverwolf on my account, so I'm able to implant that lightning weakness when I need to, and I'm able to keep things pushing a little bit better. But if I didn't have Silverwolf, I would likely be struggling to clear anything in Anomaly Arbitration with Acheron when the targets didn't have lightning weakness at all. I think Acheron currently performs very well still, under the assumption that you have 2 out of 3 between Jiao Shao, Cypher, and Silverwolf. Now, my Silverwolf is E1, and Cypher is also E1 at this point, and that does help out a lot. And it is getting to that point to where, unless I vertical invest more into Silverwolf or Cypher, my Acheron is for the most part pretty much going to be bottlenecked. I could eventually go for the E2 on Acheron, but for me, it's not really going to be a big difference because I'm still going to run her with 2 Nihility characters regardless. So that E2 really isn't really going to be significant for a player such as myself. There are a lot of players that feel like Acheron has quote unquote fallen off. She's not a good character anymore, and I highly disagree with this. She's obviously able to still clear the content. And the thing is when she was released back in 2.x, she basically destroyed the DPS ceiling back then. There were literally people back then talking about how she ruined Honkai Star Rail for them because she was just so absurdly strong in comparison to everything that came before for her. And I think that's very fitting for an Emanator. And so being in 3.x, looking back, I do feel like her power performance level was at that of a 3.x character, which makes a lot of sense because of when she came out and how strong a lot of the 3.x characters ended up being. But I still love Acheron. Her playstyle is super fun. It's super interesting going in and doing content. And I would say for anybody who wants to keep playing Acheron moving forward, you're gonna want to get Cypher. And I can promise you right now, there's gonna be a lot of people who skip Cypher and then they're gonna turn around and they're gonna say, well, Acheron's not performing well, she sucks. And it's like, no, Acheron doesn't suck. You just didn't pull her respective characters. I'm gonna say this again in a future video. Honkai Star Rail is a team building game. Everything comes down to building teams. You don't build just a single character. And so if there's a particular character that you don't like that's meant to be played in a certain team archetype, you might just want to consider just skipping out on that team archetype altogether. Now, of course, the only exception to that is like a Ron May, for example, because Ron May is just so flexible and she's so plug and play that it's really hard to avoid Ron May. It's easier now in these days, but like back then, because of just how universal she was and still is to this day, it's hard to dodge Ron May. Let me put it like that. It's way easier to dodge more specialist kind of characters, like say a Robin, for example, or a Ceredra, in comparison to your Ron May or your Trivy, which these are characters that again are going to be way more universal. Acheron's going to probably continue to do well going into the future, although I do suspect there are going to be some times where there's going to be enemy mechanics that will slow her down quite a bit. That's something that I came across in 4.0's Anomaly Arbitration, which hopefully I'll have that video uploaded within the next week and a half, 2 weeks, just depending on how my real life schedule is. She's still holding up great. For a 2.x character to still be performing this well, I don't really know what they could do with Acheron if they were to give her a buff. I have no idea what they would even do with her, I'll be honest with you, because the E1 is really solid. It's a nice quality of life improvement. I know a lot of people tend to like look down on that and they think that E1 is insignificant. Well, I'll say this, when you're getting into this type of in-game content, every crit gets to the point where it starts to really matter. And if you're going through a fight and you're being very inconsistent on your crit rate, it's gonna really hurt your damage. So having that E1 makes it very comfortable to run a crit damage chest piece instead of a crit rate body piece. Which, by the way, on this run, I was actually able to get a crit damage body for Acheron that rolled pretty doggone well. So I'm super happy about that because I've been running an attack body on Acheron for a good amount of time just because I could not roll a good crit damage body. And then getting Cypher's E1 was like super huge. The fact that Cypher's E1 allows that 50% tally stacking to be even faster than what it would be with E0 has been so massive, it's not even funny. If you've already looked at the thumbnail, you can see what kind of damage output it ended up doing. So between me improving my Acheron and getting Cypher's E1, it was a huge Cypher ultimate damage improvement. I would say probably around like maybe like 30 to 40%, maybe. I can't really calculate numbers in my head too well. But yeah, I have no regrets getting Cypher's E1. I plan on using her going into the future. And for anybody who does want to continue using Acheron, you're definitely going to want to pick up Cypher. And I will say this, her future is definitely going to be highly reliant on whether or not we continue to get a new Nihility character that can function well with Acheron in every major patch cycle. As long as she's getting that, I think her performance is going to be fine. And it's hard to say right now if we are going to get a Nihility character like that during 4.x. If not, I could really see Acheron maybe start to struggle a little bit more going toward the end of 4.x, assuming that somebody didn't vertical invest in the Cypher, didn't vertical invest in the Silver Wolf, and or they don't have Jiao Shao at all. Which Jiao Shao, obviously he already has his drawbacks with Flame Reaver, Nikador, the clones don't attack, and the lances don't attack. Obviously the exception would be the Flame Reaver and Pure Fiction, to where those particular clones will actually attack your team. That would be something that is excluded from the normal rule, essentially. Flame Reaver doesn't normally operate like that. If we were to get a new Nihility character in 4.x that syncs well with Acheron, I do believe that Silver Wolf would be on the chopping block to get replaced in that team lineup, unless of course this is a Nihility character that can actually heal the team, which then nothing's really going to change. But I wouldn't be surprised if the OG version of Silver Wolf gets pushed out, which would make sense to me because we are going to be getting a new form of Silver Wolf at some point, and I don't know if this is going to be an Elation style Silver Wolf or not. Only time will tell. And again, I'm highly looking forward to that. I've talked a lot. If you had taken out the time to watch this or listen to this, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. You be safe out there. Deuces.
This combat, this is double speed.
Free will, still water to the plate.
My purpose is to mountain Kraken, rise!
More enemies. You can't run.
I weep for the departed. It too shall fall. A little gray is too much for you.
I'll take it on.
Destined for oblivion.
Found me.
My strength isn't what it was.
This combat. This is double speed.
Dragon soaring above the lands. This is permanent!
I weep for the departed. It too shall fall.
Can I have fun this time? Time for fun. You can't run. This combat. This is double speed.
Free will, or was it fate? Still water to the plate.
My purpose is to protect.
Time is money, you know. Wait any longer and you'll owe come to me. Found me.
I weep for the departed. It too shall fall.
Time for fun. This combat this is double speed.
Another journey begins. I weep for the departed. It too shall fall. Destined for oblivion.
You want to take advantage? I'll take it on. More enemies. You can't run.
My strength isn't what it was.
Still water to the plate. I weep for the departed. It too shall fall.
Found me. Can I have fun this time? This combat. This is double speed.
Dragon soaring above
I weep for the departed. Dust rain, it too shall fall. Our cute play session is over.
Everyone believes in becomes a reality. Gotcha.
Scream forth.
Found me. It smells of money.
Kill. I weep for the departed. It too shall fall.
You can't run. This combat. This is double speed.
Another journey for bliss. I weep for the departed. It too shall fall.
Found me. You took the bait. This combat. This is double speed. And yang. All things human creations.
I weep for the departed. It too shall fall.
This combat. This is double speed.
Kill.
And yang. Converge and awaken. Human creations. This is double speed.
Free will, or was it fate? I weep for the departed. It too shall fall.
This combat. This is double speed. And yang. I see through you. Can I have fun this time? Time for fun. This is double speed.
A little gray is too much for you.
All things human creations. Found me.
I weep for the departed. It too shall fall. Again.
Something's fishy and yang.
Destined for oblivion.
Time for fun. This is double speed.
A little gray's too much for you. I weep for the departed. It too shall fall.
You can't run. No matter.
No water to afflict.
A quick divination. Converge and await. Human creations. Found me.
I weep for the departed. It too shall fall. Our cute play session is over.
With enough believers, lies become reality. Yes. Eternal pain.
Light up the dark.
Eternal.
Let's try it this other way.
Flowers bloom for tomorrow. Every petal.
All will be swept away by the wind.
It's stars. Shine for the heroes.
Existence is of no comfort. Tomorrow. Trust. We'll do anything.
Together we can do any flowers. Bloom for tomorrow. Stars, shine for the heroes.
I'm on it.
time.
Don't let waves over.
Stand still.
Ill-tidings manifest.
In the mood for another beating?
In retribution, fine.
Stand still.
In the abyss's revel, your cries rise.
Good time. Time to say bye. Boom.
Memories beneath the water lies an endless abyss. Your fate is dead.
Step up, let's. Nice, like my friend. Indulge yourselves!
Retribution will find
Offer you a requiem. Be intoxicated.
Stand still.
In the mood for another beating?
Good times. Time to say bye. Boom.
Don't let waves open your throat. In the abyss's revel, your cries rise.
Stand still.
memories of beneath the water lies an endless abyss.
Nice, like my friend. Indulge yourselves! How's this taste?
Destiny's hand was truly blessed me. Destiny isn't chosen. Ill tidings manifest.
Good time. Time to say bye. Boom. Stand still.
In the abyss's revels, your cries rise.
Memories beneath the water lies an endless abyss.
Innocent to the ears.
Nice, like my friend. Indulge yourselves!
What do you want to know? Ill fate to say. Destiny is apparent.